In the United States, 2 planes have ploughed into both towers of the World Trade Center. We just are replaying the vision now of that second plane plunging into that second tower. We are also hearing eyewitness reports from CNN that the plane, as it approached the World Trade Center, seemed to slow and level and direct itself towards the tower deliberately. Authorities are hoping they can determine the cause of this, and as yet, as you can imagine, chaos is erupting on the streets of New York. They are so desperate to try and determine what's occurred, how many people are injured, and of course evacuating the building.
But I have to tell you, I repeat, right now the FBI has not determined whether or not this is a terrorist act, although they are investigating.
All right, thank you very much, Kelly and Rita. We appreciate that. Darren,
let's go ahead and bring back in Todd Harris. Todd, are you still with us? We don't have Todd. Okay, once again, if you're just joining us, the breaking story that we're following out of New York City, within the span of 18 minutes, 2 separate planes crashing into the World Trade Center. The rescue operations underway, not clear. We're going to show you, this is the second plane after the first tower was already on fire. This happened just minutes ago. We'll let the pictures tell the story. You saw it live here on CNN as it happened. The plane crashed right into the side of the World Trade Center, causing a huge explosion. Now, as we speak, and we're showing you live pictures now, smoke and fire taking place in both towers of the World Trade Center.
And it appeared that second plane that we actually did have on videotape, on its approach toward that tower, actually turned. And I have to think, I'm not an expert in these things, so I don't know, but it would seem as though that move actually may have caused much more damage. These are incredible pictures, as you can see here.
Let's keep the pictures up as we go ahead and talk to more eyewitnesses. Joe Trachtenberg joining us on the phone. Joe, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell us what your vantage point is and what you've seen so far?
Well, we got, I heard on the radio that one of the towers was on fire, and we went to a high point in our building, which is on the 25th floor, and you had a clear view of the both World Trade Centers, and the one tower was smoking hard. And there was another plane that was flying low, and we just looked at it, and before you know it, just kamikaze, boom, right into the other tower, and mass explosion, windows flying. It was horrible. I'm still distraught looking at it.
Were you close enough to see or get a general idea of what kind of plane that was that flew in the second time?
Well, I'm not an expert on planes, but it wasn't didn't seem like a big passenger jet. It was a smaller type plane because it made some pretty radical turn, and you know, they were flying low, and you're not used to see big planes flying over Manhattan because I don't think you're allowed to, but it was pretty tough.
And explain to me again what your vantage point is, where you are in the city looking at this.
We're in Chelsea. It's like 25th Street and 7th Avenue, and it's clear looking all the way downtown, and you could see the buildings, you know, the whole downtown, because it's a clear day, and it's a disaster.
And once again, describe for us what you saw as that plane went to the second building.
That plane just flew straight into the second building on the downtown side, it appeared. It was just a huge explosion, and smoke just immediately, and fire started immediately coming from the second tower as it hit, and there was glass flying everywhere.
All right, looks like we're having a little bit of audio problem with that, so I'm going to say thanks to Joe Trachtenberg for talking to us and telling us what he saw. We were watching it right here, live on CNN, as that plane went in. He had a closer vantage point and could see, as you heard Leon, he was saying he doesn't think it was a big jet, but a smaller plane, closer up from where he could see it.
Well, we do have a tape of a recounting by another witness, another eyewitness. We're going to go to some tape that we're getting from our affiliate WABC in New York, where they interviewed an eyewitness who saw the second crash as it happened.
I'd say the whole takes about, looks like 6, 7 floors were taken out. And there's more explosions right now. Hold on, people are running.
Winston, hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
Hold on, I'll tell you what's going on.
Okay, just put Winston on pause there for just a moment.
Okay, the whole building just exploded some more. The whole top part.
Okay.
The building's still intact. People are running up the streets. Am I still connected?
Winston, this would support probably what Libby and you both said, that perhaps the fuselage was in the building that would cause a second explosion such as that.
Well, that's what just happened then.
That certainly.
Yeah, people are running up.
We're getting word that perhaps.
Okay, hold on. The people here everybody's panicking.
Keep in mind that the first plane hit about 8:48 a.m., so there had to already be a number of people at work inside the World Trade Center. We're going to go right now, bring in Rose Arce, one of our producers here at CNN. She's with us on the phone and has with her a number of people who have escaped the building. Rose.
Yes, there's a huge crowd. I'd say about hundreds of people on the streets that come from south to north. I've been really thousands of people that have been running from inside these buildings. You know, it's a very heavily trafficked area in downtown, the World Trade Center. Many of them were inside the building when they felt the explosion. And they say there was just pandemonium. There was no warning, no alarms, no anything. Everyone just raced from their desks, ran downstairs, and now there's a steady stream of folks running away from the building. Some people saying that they're fearing there'll be another explosion, and when they saw the second plane, convinced that this was dangerous, there's just an absolute flood of folks escaping downtown Manhattan right now.
And Rose, do you have anybody with you that could talk about being inside the World Trade Center when this happened?
Right now, honestly, there are scores of people that are literally running by me. There's debris on the base of the building that has continued to fall, as you know, even as far as a block away from the building. And what's happened is that everyone seems to have figured out that there's ongoing danger, and there's just a stream of folks running as quickly as they can uptown away from this.
Understandably. What about rescue efforts? I would imagine there's still a number of people inside those buildings.
Well, right now what you see is there's trucks trying to get through, and people have actually jumped from the crowd and are trying to help direct traffic to try to get emergency vehicles there. There's no traffic going in the other direction, but because of the flow of people, it looks like some emergency vehicles are actually having trouble getting to the scene.
And from where you're standing, is there any kind of command center, any place that people are being directed toward?
Right now, what there is there's a crush of emergency vehicles and rescue vehicles, but they don't seem to be quite organized in any direction. There's fire department vehicles on the one side where you see the smoke coming out of the building. On the other hand, you see groups of police officers trying to organize the crowd and in more orderly fashion. I think there seems to be some fear on their part that such...
Okay, we're just picking it up from there, basically, because we have some new information, and that is there is a great deal of suspicion tonight that the plane may have been hijacked before its departure. That's some new information coming in from different sources other than CNN, and we can confirm the information thus far is that the plane may have been hijacked. Confirming the details thus far, 2 accidents, 2 explosions, 2 planes we believe have crashed into both towers of the World Trade Center. This occurred within 20 minutes, the first plane crashing into the tower this morning just prior to 9 a.m, the second plane 20 minutes later. Now, there is some speculation there may not have been a second plane, but perhaps the fuselage from the first could have triggered the second explosion, but the pictures do seem to belie that, so we can't confirm the sequence of events. Obviously, there's a great deal of misinformation around at the moment. Eyewitnesses are describing the second explosion, the first plane crash into the tower as a kamikaze act, quote unquote. It did appear that it was a deliberate act, a small plane, not a passenger jet, it appears, according to the eyewitness, seemed to align itself with the tower and directly aim for it. We are also told that the President George W. Bush will be making an address shortly. We'll take a break now and be back with this breaking story right after this.
What we started, won't try to make you stay. You won't even have to say bye-bye.
The Panel, 9:30 Wednesday.
It does look like they may have been hijacked and terrorism might be at play, although no one has claimed responsibility yet. The FBI is investigating. There are no word yet on casualty counts, where these planes may have emanated from, their departure point. Let's cross back to CNN now for an address to the nation by the President.
Unfortunately, we'll be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary Rod Page and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
President Bush, there's...
US President George W. Bush there describing the national tragedy, addressing the nation and, of course, outlining some of the details of an apparent terrorist attack on the country. He has iterated, he's spoken to the FBI, ordered the full resources of the Federal Bureau of Intelligence to hunt down the perpetrators of this apparent terrorist attack. Let's cross now back to CNN.
On the World Trade Center was an American Airlines 767, a Boeing aircraft that took off from Boston. What happened to that airplane as it took off from Boston and how it ended up at the World Trade Center, our details we'll have to fill in as we go. But let's go ahead and bring in our David Ensor. David, you were saying before we interrupted you for the president's remarks.
Well, unfortunately, the amount of detail that the officials who are tracking this have is pretty sketchy at this point. But I was just saying that officials are calling this an act of terrorism. They're saying that's clearly what it is, clearly not an accident. And law enforcement agencies, the FBI and others, will be taking the lead on this, officials say. And clearly, obviously, they will first try to ascertain who did this. What nationality are they? What's behind this? That's really all I can say. There are several places around the government. There are groups of officials gathering and setting up crisis centers to try and deal with the flow of information on this, which, as you can imagine, is going to be considerable as the day progresses.
And so far, as far as we know, no one has been taking responsibility for this.
There have been no claims of responsibility, and U.S. intelligence officials say they had no warning of anything like this coming along.
All right, David Ensor, thank you for joining us on the phone. Once again, you can see that information at the bottom of your screen. 2 different planes have flown into the World Trade Center within the last hour. One plane was an American Airlines Boeing 767 from Boston. In terms of how many people were on board that plane and if it was forcibly taken from Boston into New York, we still have yet to learn.
We're joined now on the telephone by the former Federal Emergency Management Agency Director James Lee Witt. Director Witt, you're watching these pictures with us this morning. Your comments?
Well, it's just horrible. There's no doubt. I did see the one plane flying into the building. It's just unbelievable, something like this. But, you know, we've been... for several years now, we've been working on terrorist-type events, and, and this is apparently one of those events that I do not know yet, but apparently it could be. And right now, I know I really feel for those families, but Richie and the New York Emergency Management, the state of New York, and I know they're very busy right now in the FBI and law enforcement, but this is one of those crisis management as well as a consequence management situation that they're going to have to be dealing with.
You know, the first thing this calls to mind to many of us who have been here to cover these events was the World Trade Center bombing back in, was it 96 when that bombing occurred?
Yes.
And you were director of FEMA at that particular time. Since then, has there been a plan put in place for something like this, to recover from this, or to go through the exercises necessary to get people out and to recover from it?
Well, they have a very good plan in place, and for even events, not as this. I don't think I don't know if they put a plan in place for airline crashing into it, but I know they take every scenario they could think of and try to deal with a plan that will help them respond in the most effective way. And we even practice airplanes flying into igloos, and at some of the arsenals around the United States. So you try to practice for everything you can think of and hope for the best, and that you can be able to respond and hope none of this happens. But
well, on that note, then, did you run any kinds of tests at all, or any kinds of, I don't know, theoretical tests or computer tests or anything on something like this?
I'm not. We didn't. I'm not sure if New York City did. I'm sure they did. But you know, you can't. How can you stop something like this without having an anti-aircraft gun sitting on top of buildings? You know.
Yeah.
You just can't. You can prepare the best you can be, and that's all you can do. But I'm sure that they've got everything in place and doing. They always do an excellent job up there in New York.
Director James Lee Witt, former director of FEMA, we thank you very much for your time this morning. We may be talking with you later on. Darren.
As we continue our coverage, our Aaron Brown in New York City joining us now. Aaron, we can see over your left shoulder there the building still smoldering of the World Trade Center.
Well, it is. And just as we're about to go to a break, let's update with all of the latest information. American authorities are confirming an American Boeing 767 jet took off from Boston and may well have been hijacked, but they cannot determine who did this and why. No group has yet claimed any responsibility. However, American officials can confirm and clearly believe this is an act of terrorism. They do need, of course, to ascertain yet responsibility. We can confirm 6 people are dead thus far, at least 1,000 are injured. No warnings were given to the government whatsoever, so this has come obviously completely by surprise. In terms of the impact on the area, we can confirm 40,000 people work inside those twin towers and at least 150,000 visit every day. Significant impact on the area. We'll bring you the details as they come to hand. Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly.
Things like that. But in all my years down here, and I've lived down here for about 20 years within walking distance easily of the building, I've never heard anything like this, and that's why I just immediately glanced up and just followed the track of this sound and this huge plane that was swooping over my head.
Could you see any markings on it whatsoever?
No, I did not. It was too quick. I can't give you any kind of identifying help on what it was.
Do you remember what color it was?
My impression was that it had a tan coloration to it. However, the sun, it was very low in the horizon, and I think kind of orange, and it may have been simply the color of the sun reflecting off a silver exterior. I really am not sure of that.
Okay, Mark. Anything else? What's the mood in the environment down there at the moment? As if it's not hard to imagine.
And everyone who glimpses it close up, it's quite different seeing it from the ground than on these television pictures that I'm now looking at, because it's close to you and you see what the impact must have been like, and you see the kind of devastation that has incurred by the buildings, and it's just frightening is perhaps even too mild a word.
Okay.
It's absolutely just a horrible, horrible sight. It reminds you of the worst kind of effects in movies that, you know, you're reassured watching a movie that it's an effect, but this is not.
Well, Mark, you and I are supposed to have a meeting not long from now. We'd prefer you to go and work the story, if you would, and call us back as soon as you can.
I will indeed.
Many thanks. Mark Obenhaus, one of our senior producers on the phone, who saw the incident, describes it as a large plane, not sure what the color was, not sure the number of engines it had, which in his mind, he's a very experienced reporter, reflects the speed and surprise with which this aircraft, this is the first one we're talking about now, just before 9 o'clock, approached the World Trade Towers from the north, causing the first huge gap in the building. And Mark describes the plane being engulfed in some respects by the building. Didn't see wings fall off, saw it go absolutely, totally, almost as he described it, into the building itself. And
numbers or casualty counts, although we can confirm these planes crashed into the upper levels of the World Trade Center. Again, no numbers, as we said, on casualties, and no confirmed responsibility from any of the terrorist groups around the world. Don't forget, the World Trade Center was the scene in 1993 of a terrorist bombing. And earlier reports from eyewitnesses described one of the plane's approach to the buildings just minutes before the accident. The eyewitness described it as a kamikaze act. It appeared quite deliberate. It was a smaller plane. The president has also addressed the nation just minutes ago, declaring a national tragedy, confirming that they do believe it is a terrorist attack on the country. He has briefed the FBI to order all resources to hunt down the perpetrators of this crime. Let's cross back now to CNN for the latest breaking information.
Condoleezza Rice, National Security Advisor. Then he received an update from his Chief of Staff, Andrew Card, traveling with him. Then it was made clear to the press, traveling with the President, he would make a statement. Shortly before that statement, he was actually sitting down with some children here at the elementary school, reading them a book. Reporters asked him if he knew about the situation of the Twin Towers. He nodded and said he would talk about it momentarily. In fact, he did. We just heard the President's statement declaring this an apparent act of terrorism. Yes, Aaron?
Let me interrupt you here. Senator Kennedy is speaking in Washington as, again, one of the planes was hijacked from Boston. Perhaps we can hear the senator now.
This morning, we underline the point that it is postponed. We are not going to see the business of America deferred because of terrorism, whether it's in education or in other area of public policy. We're looking forward to hearing from the First Lady on a subject matter which is of central concern to all families in this country, and because of her experience and her leadership, this committee and the Congress and the American people would have benefited greatly from her comments. And we will look forward to an early
Senator Ted Kennedy in Washington. Chris Plant, a CNN producer, is at the Pentagon, where there is a significant fire. Chris, you're on the phone. Can you hear me okay?
Just interrupting CNN's coverage. There. You are seeing pictures of Washington. And quite unbelievable reports tonight, unconfirmed reports. A third attack has just taken place on the Pentagon in Washington. It has just been targeted. We are seeing smoke billowing, I believe. No, we're still on New York. No, we do have the Pentagon there. Just confirming, you can see smoke billowing from the Pentagon. Unconfirmed reports, a third terrorist attack, although it is apparent there has been an incident at least, and we are yet to determine the details. One of our correspondents in the United States is making her way to the scene in New York, where two towers at the World Trade Center have been, well, there's been a significant accident and explosions. We can confirm one of the planes, two planes crashed into both towers in New York. One of the planes departed from Boston, and it is believed it may well have been hijacked. There are obviously a great deal of sketchy details yet to be confirmed. Casualty counts have not been determined. Pandemonium is erupting across the eastern seaboard, as you can imagine, with the President confirming a national tragedy and significant suspicion of a terrorist attack. The FBI has been ordered in to conduct a full investigation, but the primary focus at the moment is saving lives, rescuing those trapped in the World Trade Center. As we mentioned earlier, 150,000 odd people enter the World Trade Center every day. 40,000 work there every day. These planes, one in particular, crashed at least above the 80th floor, so it may well indicate people still remain trapped, not to mention the scenes down below. Again, reminding our viewers that the World Trade Center was the scene of a terrorist attack in 1993, and we believe 6 people, I'll yet to confirm those details, perished in that incident then. Let's go to a break. We'll be back with more shortly.
That's correct. If you look now at Washington, so we've got a major fire at the Pentagon.
This guy's evacuated, but that is as much as we know for sure at the moment. John Miller, go back to what you're hearing on your nets.
Actually, it's interesting. In New York City, they're reporting on what we're seeing here also, essentially trying to tell everybody that heightened security is important now.
John, I apologize. There's a lot of us here. What are we listening to there? Say again. Say again, please. Come here, John.
Reporting that bomb squads are checking out Air Force One.
Good. Try to correct. So we have bomb squads.
I think you're going to see a lot of this, and I think we were talking about this a few minutes ago. In fact,
when I was telling you that in New York they were evacuating the municipal building, the United Nations, Gracie Mansion, which is the mayor's residence, all potential targets, I suggested to you that shortly in Washington you'll probably be seeing the same kind of reaction at sensitive symbolic locations. And apparently that's become more than a concern, but perhaps a reality.
Okay, we do know, or at least the Associated Press is now reporting, that an aircraft crashed near the Pentagon, and the West Wing of the White House, as Claire Shipman told us, was evacuated amid these threats of terrorism. I guess first of all, let me go to another eyewitness. ABC's Bill Blakemore, one of our senior reporters, has been an eyewitness to the New York incident. Bill, you on the phone?
Yes, I am, Peter.
Go ahead.
I'm down at 12th Street. It looks like we're more than a mile north of this very surrealistic site, and business has completely come to a stop here. Looks like throughout lower Manhattan, people standing in the streets, cell phones aren't working. A few of these phone booths, such as I'm talking to you from now, are working. One man, just shaking his head, said to me a few moments ago, I was supposed to be at a meeting in the building at 10:30 this morning, and then I saw the second plane hit the tower in this flash of light. There's a complete cessation of regular life. There's one delivery man standing here looking like he doesn't know where to go with this stack of beer crates. So all of lower Manhattan is just standing in the streets on this sunny morning looking at this unrealistic sight in front of us, this gray smoke coming out of the Trade Center.
Okay, Bill, talk to as many people as you can. Call us back when you can. Let's return to Washington visually at the moment. Just take a look at that picture. That smoke behind the executive office building, which is right next.
Extraordinary scene. Following across Washington, D.C. and New York as we speak. Let's cross back now to CNN for an update.
Mall in Washington, we cannot yet tell you. We can tell you that the White House has been evacuated, and we can tell you that 2 planes have crashed into the World Trade Center in New York. All of this began just a little more than an hour ago at about 8:45 Eastern Time. Chris Plant, tell me what you've learned since we last talked.
Well, in speaking to people here at the Pentagon as they're being evacuated from the building, I am told by several people that there was, in fact, an explosion. I was told by one witness, an Air Force enlisted, senior enlisted man, that he was outside when it occurred. He said that he saw a helicopter circle the building. He said that it appeared to be a U.S. military helicopter and that it disappeared behind the building where the helicopter landing zone is. Excuse me. And that he then saw a fireball go into the sky. I'm attempting to make my way around to that side of the building in my car right now to see if I can get a better visual perspective on the scene on that side of the building. But I can tell you that security has certainly clamped down. The U.S. Park Police, another federal law enforcement department, has arrived in force on the scene. There's a Park Police helicopter overhead. Every car that arrives at the gate where I was located was being stopped by officers at gunpoint. Everyone is being forced out of their vehicles as they arrive at the Pentagon. It's a very tense situation, obviously, but initial reports from witnesses indicate that there was, in fact, a helicopter circling the building, contrary to what the AP reported, according to the witnesses I've spoken to anyway, and that this helicopter disappeared behind the building and that there was then an explosion. That's about all I have from here.
Okay, let's do this, Chris. Why don't you continue reporting, and we'll pass along a couple of other things that we're picking up along the way. Trading at the New York Stock Exchange. The Stock Exchange, as many of you probably know, but some of you don't, is in that part of lower Manhattan, not quite as far down as the Trade Center, but it is in that part of lower Manhattan, and trading has been suspended there. Bridges and tunnels coming into New York have been closed. That will create a whole different set of problems. We are also being told that the FAA has suspended takeoffs and landings, and I want to make sure I get this right, guys, that at all airports around the country. Air travel in this country has come to a halt this morning, as clearly people in government, police forces, fire departments are trying to figure out what exactly is going on. There are several now incidents that look, for all that we can tell, to be a major terrorist attack here in the United States. So all airports all across the country are closed. All bridges and tunnels coming into Manhattan are closed. The Pentagon has been evacuated or is being evacuated. The White House is being evacuated. The president, who is in Sarasota today to make a speech on education, has spoken briefly to cameras and will shortly make his way back to Washington. They are checking out Air Force One now. Let's go to Atlanta. Chad Myers can talk to us a bit.
Some more information just through to hand. The security has, of course, cordoned off the area around the Pentagon. The White House has been evacuated. All of this, of course, began at 8:45 Eastern Standard Time in the United States, New York in particular, and this incident has evolved, and it's almost like a wildfire. It's spreading. We've had 2 plane crashes into the World Trade Center and another crash, another explosion at the Pentagon. Eyewitnesses are claiming they saw a helicopter circling the building, circling the Pentagon, then disappear. Moments later, heard an explosion and saw a fireball in the air. The President, George W. Bush, we believe, is making his way back to Washington urgently, and we'll be back with more details. We're trying to cross to one of our correspondents on the ground there. Stay with us here on 10. Vision there of the second plane crashing into the second tower. Eyewitnesses are saying as the plane approached that tower, it appeared to be like a kamikaze act. It did appear to be quite deliberate. Authorities are confirming one of the 2 planes departed from Boston Airport. They are unsure whether the plane was hijacked. As you can see there, we are replaying that vision of the second plane crashing into that second tower. There was some speculation earlier that the fuselage of the first plane crash may still have lodged itself somehow in the second and triggered the second explosion, but the pictures seem to belie that. As we said, significant chaos in New York at the moment, mass evacuations. All landings and takeoffs, aviation in the United States has been ground to a halt as authorities try to determine how to put a